Close your eyes and imagine the year 120 BCE. The world is vast, silent, and disconnected. You are standing at the edge of the known world, where the dust of the Gobi Desert meets the horizon. Beneath your feet lies a path carved by millions of footsteps, the Silk Road. It is not just a route for trade. It is a bridge between civilizations, a trail of mystery, and the lifeline of the ancient world. Tonight, we walk this path together, one slow step at a time. The gates of Chang'an, where the horizon begins. The air in Chang'an during the dawn of the Han Dynasty does not move quickly. It lingers, heavy with the scent of charcoal fires, steamed wheat bread, and the faint, metallic tang of the morning mist rising from the Wei River. You are standing at the threshold of the Western market. To your back lies the greatest city in the world, a grid of perfect symmetry, a testament to man's desire for order. Before you lies the gate. Beyond that gate, the road begins, stretching 3,000 miles into a geography of whispers and shadows. You are a merchant, but in this era, a merchant is also a diplomat, a cartographer, and a survivor. Your primary cargo is silk bales of it, wrapped in oiled leather to protect them from the humidity of the lowlands and the abrasive sands of the heights. In the dim light of the lantern, the silk does not merely sit. It glows with a soft, inner luminescence. It is a secret technology, a mystery of the mulberry leaf and the worm, a fabric so coveted that in the far-off West, men will eventually trade its weight in gold. Listen to the sounds of the preparation. It is a symphony of the mundane. The rhythmic chewing of the Bactrian camels, their double humps sagging slightly with the weight of water skins and grain bags. The soft clink of bronze coins washu sewn into the lining of vests. The low, guttural murmurs of the camel drivers, men who speak dialects of the frontier, their skin cured like leather by the sun of the Hexi corridor. The architecture of the gate itself. The Mingde Gate is a monstrous achievement of rammed earth and timber. It is not merely an exit. It is a psychological boundary. Inside is the Emperor's law, the protection of the garrison, and the predictability of the seasons. Outside is the Shu, the western regions. As the heavy timber beams are drawn back, the sound is a low, tectonic groan that vibrates in your chest. As you lead your lead camel forward, the hooves make a muffled thud on the packed earth. You notice the dust. The soil here is loess, a fine yellow silt blown in from the deserts over millions of years. It is the very foundation of Chinese civilization, fertile yet fragile. As the sun begins to crest the eastern walls, the world turns a pale gold. This is the color of your journey, the mystery of the first mile. The first few miles outside the city are deceptively peaceful. You pass through the suburban rings where the elite have their villas and the peasants tend to the mulberry orchards. These trees are the silent engines of the Silk Road. You stop for a moment to watch a woman tending the larvae. It is a quiet, repetitive Tasca prehistoric rhythm. The mystery of silk is guarded by the threat of death. To take a silkworm out of the empire is a capital offense. You carry the finished product, the ghost of the worm's labor, destined for a Roman senator who does not yet know your name. As the city walls fade into the haze, the reality of the ancient world begins to settle. There are no maps as we understand them today. Your map is a series of stars, a collection of stories told by those who returned, and the physical memory of the landmarks, a twisted juniper tree, a strangely shaped rock, the ruins of a forgotten watchtower from a dynasty that collapsed before the Han rose to power. The weight of history. To travel this road in 120 BCE is to walk through layers of time. You pass the burial mounds of ancient kings, huge, silent hills of earth that have watched travelers for centuries. There is a profound sense of deep time here. The primitive people who occupied these lands before the Han expansion left behind mysteries that even you, a learned merchant, cannot fully grasp. Occasionally, you see stone markers with carvings that resemble no known script remnants of the Yuezhi or the Xiongnu. Nomadic empires that move like the wind. The logistics of your journey are a masterpiece of ancient engineering. Every 20 miles, there is a postal station or a small garrison. You see the smoke from the signal towers. If the Xiongnu raiders appear on the horizon, these smoke signals can carry a message to the emperor in Shanghan faster than a horse can gallop. It is a primitive internet, a network of fire and light that keeps the road breathing. The silence of the caravan by midday, the chatter of the city has been replaced by the boring history of the trail. The most prominent sound is the wind. It is a persistent, lonely whistling that seems to come from the heart of the continent. It carries the scent of dry grass and salt flats. You find yourself falling into a trance. The swaying motion of the camel, the repetitive sight of the yellow road, the weight of the sun on your conical hat. This is the merchant's meditation. You think of the logistics. How many ladders of water remain in the goatskin bags? Will the iron shoes of the horses hold until the next smithy in Langzhou? The price of cinnamon in the markets of Sogdiana. These are the thoughts that fill the silence. It is not a journey of high drama, but of immense, crushing patience. To move at 3 miles per hour for months on end is to experience time in its rawest form. The strange sight of the first outpost as evening approaches on your first week. You reach a small outpost near the Wei River crossing. Here, the mysterious and the realistic collide. You meet a group of travelers coming from the west. They look different. Their eyes are a startling green, their hair the color of rust. They are Tocharians, people whose origins are lost in the mists of prehistory. They bring strange stones lapis lazuli from the mines of Badakhshan and stories of a great blue lake that never freezes. You sit by the fire. The wood crackles tamarisk branches that pop and hiss. You eat a simple meal of dried plums and flatbread. The conversation is sparse. In the ancient world, information is the most valuable currency, and it is shared sparingly. You listen to the rhythmic grinding of the camels chewing their cud. It is a soothing, primal sound that has echoed on this road since the first nomadic tribes tamed the beasts. Whispers of the Taklamakan, the desert of no return they. Transition from the green fringes of the oasis to the edge of the Taklamakan is not a sudden line, but a fading of life. The trees become shorter, their trunks twisted by the wind into gnarled skeletal shapes. The grass turns to a brittle silver gray, and then, eventually, there is only the sand, the Taklamakan. In the ancient tongues of the Tarim Basin, the name carries a heavy warning. You go in, but you do not come out. It is one of the largest sandy deserts on Earth, a vast, shifting sea of dunes that covers over 130,000 square miles. For you, the merchant, it is the most treacherous segment of the Silk Road, a place where geography becomes a predator and time seems to lose its forward motion. The great silence as your caravan enters the dunes. The first thing you notice is the sound, or rather, the lack of it. In the mountains, there was the rush of water. In the cities, the clatter of life. Here, the sand swallows sound. The footsteps of your camels, usually a rhythmic thud on packed earth, are now silent as they sink into the fine, powdery loess. It is a world muffled in velvet dot. The only remaining sound is the singing sands. As the wind moves across the crescent-shaped dunes, known as barshans, it creates a low-frequency hum, a tectonic vibration that sounds like distant drums or the humming of 1,000 monks. To the ancient mind, these were the voices of spirits, the ghouls of the waste, calling out the names of travelers to lure them away from the path. You know, through the practical wisdom of the trail, that it is merely the friction of billions of grains of quartz sliding against one another. Yet in the dead of night, the mystery feels more real than the science dot, the architecture of the dunes. Dunes of the Taklamakan are mountains made of movement. Some rise over 1,000 feet high, shifting several meters every year. They are works of art carved by the burn, the fierce northwesterly winds dot as you lead your caravan. You follow the southern route, hugging the base of the Kanlan Mountains. To your left, the white peaks of the mountains provide a jagged, frozen contrast to the burning orange of the desert. You are looking for the ancient riverbeds, the lost rivers like the Nia and the Keria, which flow down from the melting glaciers only to be swallowed by the desert sands. You stop at a site that is already ancient in 120 BCE, the ruins of a settlement that the sand has partially vomited back up. You see the tops of wooden posts made of poplar wood, preserved perfectly by the extreme aridity. There is no rot here. The desert is a giant tomb of dehydration. You find a shard of pottery, painted with swirling patterns that predate the Han Dynasty by 1,000 years. It is a reminder that people have tried to conquer this silence for eons, and the silence has always won. The logistics of survival. The boring history of the Taklamakan is a history of water management. Your life depends on the Karas, an ancient Persian system of underground tunnels that you will encounter as you move further west. But here, in the heart of the dunes, you rely on the water-smelling instinct of your lead camel. The Bactrian camel is a biological miracle. Their thick eyelashes filter out the stinging silt. Their nostrils can close completely against the sandstorms. They do not sweat. They store fat in their humps, which they metabolize into water and energy. As you watch the rhythmic swaying of their humps, you find your own breathing syncing with their gait. Inhale, step, exhale, step. The heat of the day reaches 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius. But the air is so dry that you do not feel the moisture leaving your body. You simply become lighter, more brittle, like the landscape itself. The mirage and the mystery by mid-afternoon. The heat creates a fata morgana, a complex mirage. You see a shimmering lake on the horizon, bordered by lush date palms. Your mind knows it is an atmospheric refraction, a layer of hot air bending the light from the sky. But your soul aches for the water dot in this state of heat-induced trance. The history of the desert begins to feel fluid. You think of the beauty of the lawn, the mummies found in this region. Even now, buried beneath the dunes you walk upon, lie people with Western features, woven wool tartans, and feathered caps, buried 4,000 years ago. Who were they? How did they survive here when the world was younger? The Taklamakan does not give up its secrets easily. It only preserves them in salt and sand. The night vault, when the sun finally dips behind the dunes, the temperature drops with a terrifying speed. Within an hour, the heat is replaced by a bone-chilling cold that can reach below freezing. You huddle with your caravan in the lee of a massive dune. You light a small fire of dried camel dung, the only fuel available. The smoke is thin and acrid. Above you, the sky opens up into a celestial vault that no modern city dweller can imagine. Because there is no moisture and no light pollution for 1,000 miles, the stars do not just twinkle. They glare. The Milky Way is a thick, frothy river of silver dot. You lie on your back, wrapped in a heavy felt cloak. You listen to the camels grinding their teeth in their sleep. You are a tiny speck of consciousness in a landscape that is indifferent to your existence. This realization is not frightening. It is a profound relief. The ego dissolves into the vastness of the ancient world. You are simply a merchant on a road under the stars, moving toward a destination that is still months away. The dust of centuries as you drift toward sleep. You run your hand through the sand beside your bedroll. It is cool now, like flowing water. This sand was once a mountain. It was ground down by glaciers, carried by rivers, and polished by the wind over millions of years. Every grain is a piece of deep history. Tomorrow, You will wake before the sun. You will check the leather straps on the silk bales. You will offer a small prayer to the gods of the waste. And you will continue your slow, methodical crawl across the desert of no return. A single stitch in the vast tapestry of the Silk Road, the high passes of the Pamirs, touching the roof of the world. The warmth of the Tarim Basin is now a memory. Behind you lies the dust of the Taklamakan. Before you rises a wall of stone so immense that it seems to hold up the very fabric of the sky. You have reached the Pamir, not the roof of the world. This is the point where the great mountain ranges of Asia, the Himalayas, the Karakoram, the Kunlun, and the Tian Shan all collide in a chaotic upward thrust of granite and ice dot to the ancient merchant. This was the stone tower mentioned by Ptolemy. It is the most vertical segment of your journey, a place where the air thins, the light changes, and the world becomes a monochrome study in gray, white, and obsidian. The ascent into the thin air, the climb begins gradually. You follow the course of the Gez River, winding through narrow canyons where the walls are so high they block the sun for all but 2 hours of the day. The sound of the desert's silence is replaced by the roar of glacial meltwater, a cold, violent sound that echoes against the cliff's dot as you ascend. You feel the mountain sickness, or what the Han Chronicles called headache mountain effect. The air here contains less oxygen, and every step requires a conscious effort of will. Your heartbeat becomes a slow, rhythmic drum in your ears. For the boring history of this trek, there is no rushing. You move at the pace of a heartbeat. One step, a breath, a pause. The camels, despite their strength, begin to grunt with the strain, their breath forming thick plumes of steam in the freezing morning air dot. The geology of the roof. Pamirs are a geological mystery. They are still rising, pushed upward by the slow-motion collision of the Indian subcontinent into Eurasia. As you walk, you are walking on the remains of an ancient seabed that has been thrust 5 miles into the air. If you look closely at the slate-gray rocks beside the trail, you might find the fossil of a seashell assailant, stony witness to a time when this frozen peak was the bottom of a tropical ocean. The rocks here are ancient Proterozoic and Paleozoic formations that have been weathered by wind and ice into jagged needles. The trail itself is a ledge road, sometimes no wider than 3 feet, carved into the face of the precipice by generations of unknown travelers. One side is the mountain wall. The other is a 1,000-foot drop into a turquoise river fed by the glaciers above. The mystery of the high-altitude nomads in these desolate heights. You encounter the people of the peaks. They are the ancestors of the Kyrgyz and the Waki, living in yurts made of thick yak wool felt. To them, the thin air is home. They watch your caravan with a quiet, steady gaze. There is an ancient, primitive mystery to their lives. They trade in mountain gold, the wool of the Marco Polo sheep, Ovis ammon poli. These creatures, with their massive, spiraling horns, are the ghosts of the Pamirs. To see one silhouetted against the sky is considered an omen of a safe passage. The nomads provide you with yak butter tea, a thick, salty, pungent liquid that is the only thing capable of cutting through the cold in your bones. The fat provides the slow-burning energy needed for the final push over the pass. The silence of the snow line at 15,000 feet, the world changes. The last of the hardy juniper bushes disappear. There is no more birdsong. There is only the wind, the Pamir wind, which does not blow so much as it vibrates. It carries the scent of ancient ice, a smell that is clean, metallic, and utterly devoid of life. The snow here does not melt. It accumulates in layers, turning into blue ice that flows slowly down the valleys in massive glaciers. You pass the edge of a glacier, and the sound of the ice cracking under its own weight sounds like a distant gunshot. It is a reminder that the mountains are alive, moving in a time frame that makes a human life seem like a flicker of a candle. The crossing of the Wakcher. Past the climax of this chapter is the crossing of the pass. The ground is a treacherous mix of shale and permafrost. You must cross before the afternoon clouds roll in, bringing the whiteout, a condition where the sky and the ground become the same blinding shade of white. And all sense of direction vanishes. As you reach the summit of the pass, you stop. The view is staggering. Below you, the world falls away into the Wakan corridor. You are standing at the continental divide. Behind you, the waters flow toward the Pacific. Before you, they flow toward the Aral Sea and the Indian Ocean. You are at the pivot point of the world. The boring history of this moment is the sheer physical exhaustion. You do not feel like a conqueror. You feel like an ant that has crawled over a pebble. The silence at the top of the world is heavy. It is a weighty silence, a pressure on the eardrums that feels like being underwater. The descent and the change of light. The descent is, in many ways, more dangerous than the climb. The knees ache, and the gravity pulls at the heavy silk bales, threatening to unbalance the camels. But as you lose altitude, the air grows thick again. You can feel the oxygen returning to your blood, a subtle warmth spreading through your limbs. The light in the Pamirs is unlike anywhere else. Because the air is so thin, there is less scattering of light. The shadows are pitch black, and the highlights are brilliant gold. As the sun sets behind the Hindu Kush in the distance, the peaks turn a deep, bruised purple. Then a ghostly blue dot the camp at the base of the world that night. You camp in a high mountain meadow, a Pamir, or high pasture. The ground is covered in tiny, hardy wildflowers that bloom for only 3 weeks a year. You lie in your tent, listening to the rhythmic bells of the lead camel. The sound is steady, comforting, and slow. You think about the silk you carry. It has traveled from the humid plains of China, through the burning sands of the Taklamakan, and now it has touched the roof of the world. It is a survivor, and you, the merchant, are the thread that connects these impossible landscapes. As you drift into a deep, heavy sleep, your breath finally slows, matching the ancient, tectonic rhythm of the mountains. Caravanserais of Samarkand, a tapestry of tongues after the vertical silence of the Pamir passes and the biting chill of the high-altitude winds. The descent into the Zarafshan Valley feels like a return to the living. The air becomes soft again, carrying the scent of damp earth and ripening fruit. You are approaching Samarkand, the jewel of the Silk Road, a city whose name has whispered through the dreams of merchants for 1,000 years. As your caravan approaches the city gates, the setting sun casts a deep, honey-colored glow over the turquoise-tiled domes that are beginning to rise from the horizon. But for a merchant, the true sanctuary is not the palace or the temple. It is the caravanserai. The architecture of the sanctuary, the caravanserai, is an ancient masterpiece of functional design. Imagine a massive, rectangular fortress built of sun-dried bricks and fired clay. Its walls are thick enough to keep out the heat of the Central Asian sun and the dust of the steppe. There is only one entrance, a massive arched gateway made of heavy cedar wood, reinforced with iron studs. As you lead your led camel through the archway, the sound changes instantly. The whistling wind of the open road is cut off, replaced by the cool, echoing interior of the courtyard. The ground is paved with smooth river stones, worn down by the hooves of millions of animals over centuries. The layout is a perfect square. In the center lies a large stone basin of hawse, filled with still dark water that reflects the stars. Surrounding this courtyard are 2 levels of arched alcoves. The lower level is for the animals and the heavy goods. The upper level is for the men. It is a world within a world, a microcosm of the entire Silk Road compressed into a single building. The symphony of the unloading the boring history of the Silk Road is found in the repetitive, meditative labor of the evening. Listen to the sounds of the caravan settling in. The rhythmic clack-clack of wooden crates being lowered. The heavy sigh of a camel as its burden is finally removed, its joints creaking as it kneels on the stones. You watch as the handlers unroll the felt blankets. The smell of the Silk Road is most intense here. It is a mixture of damp wool, dry hay, wood smoke, and the sharp, sweet aroma of dried apricots. You run your hand over your silk bales. They are dusty but intact. In the dimming light, you check the wax seals on the spice jars, cloves and black pepper from the distant south, now resting in the heart of Sogdiana. A tapestry of tongues as the cooking fires are lit in the courtyard. The tapestry of tongues begins to weave itself. Samarkand is the great crossroads. Around the fire, you hear a low, melodic hum of languages that have traveled thousands of miles. There is the sharp, rhythmic Sogdian, the language of the master traders of this region. There is the soft, flowing Persian of the scholars and poets. The guttural, staccato dialects of the Turkic nomads from the northern steppes. And your own tongue, the Han Chinese, sounding crisp and tonal against the others. In this ancient era, no one person understands everything, yet everyone understands the language of trade. A nod, a gesture toward a cup of tea, the showing of a sample of lapis lazuli. It is a slow, silent dance of diplomacy. The stories told here are not of wars or kings, but of the boring history of the earth, which wells have dried up in the west, the price of silver in Babylon, and the rumors of a new, faster breed of horses being bred in the Fergana Valley. The mystery of the Sogdian. Merchant Samarkand is the home of the Sogdians, perhaps the most mysterious and essential people of the ancient world. They are the middlemen of the universe. They do not build empires. They build networks. You observe a Sogdian merchant across the fire. He wears a tall, pointed cap and a kaftan of patterned silk. He is a polyglot, a man who lives between worlds. To him, the Silk Road is not a journey. It is a permanent state of being. The Sogdians created a primitive globalism long before the modern world was conceived. They established colonies in every major city from China to Byzantium, creating a chain of trust that allowed a merchant to deposit money in one city and withdraw it 3,000 miles away. The ritual of the tea and the hearth. Evening meal in a Samarkand caravanserai is a lesson in patience. There is no haste. You wait for the large copper samovars to hiss. The tea is served in small, handleless ceramic bowls. It is hot, dark, and bitter, flavored with a pinch of salt and a thread of saffron. You eat naan, the traditional flatbread of Samarkand, baked in a clay tandoor. It is thick, dusty with flour, and marked with intricate geometric patterns in the center. As you tear the bread, you feel the connection to the ancient grains of this valley, watered by the melting snows of the mountains you just crossed. The boring history of this moment is the feeling of the weight leaving your body. The tension of the mountain passes dissolves into the warmth of the hearth. The shadows of the arches flicker against the brick walls, creating a hypnotic pattern of light and dark. You are safe. The walls are 6 feet thick. The guards are at the gate. The world outside is vast and dangerous, but here, in the heart of the stone, there is peace. The library of the night, as the fires die down to embers, the caravanserai becomes a library of whispers. In the ancient world, knowledge was passed orally, and a merchant's journey was as much about collecting information as it was about collecting goods. You hear a traveler speaking of the caves of the 1,000 Buddhas, where monks are carving entire mountains into shrines. Another whispers of the glassmakers of Alexandria, who can turn sand into transparent jewels. These are the mysteries of the ancient world, things that sound like magic, but are rooted in the incredible reality of human ingenuity. You lie down on a thick, patterned carpet in your upper-level cell. The air is cool and still. Below, you can hear the occasional thump of a camel shifting in its sleep, and the distant, rhythmic chanting of a night watchman. The eternal rhythm Samarkand is not just a city. It is a heartbeat. It is the place where the East and the West hold their breath before moving on. As you drift towards sleep, you realize that you are part of an eternal flow. Like the water in the hawes in the courtyard, you have been gathered here from many sources, and tomorrow you will flow out again toward new horizons. The silk in the storehouse below is silent, yet it has brought all these people together. The worm, the leaf, the weaver, and the merchant, all connected by this thin, shimmering thread. The boring history of the world is not the dates of battles, but these quiet nights of rest between the long stretches of the road. Your eyes close as the last ember in the courtyard turns to gray ash. The tapestry of tongues fades into the single, unified language of sleep, echoes of the steppe, the nomads, and the infinite sky. As you leave the high walls of Samarkand and the structured oasis of Sogdiana, the world begins to open. The trees thin out, the mountains soften into rolling hills, and then, quite suddenly, the hills flatten into the steppe. This is the great Eurasian heartland, a sea of grass that stretches from the borders of avoiders, China to the mouth of the Danube. In the ancient world of 120 BCE, the steppe is not a void. It is a powerful, living entity. For the merchant, entering the steppe is like launching a boat into the open ocean. There are no landmarks here, no fixed roads, only a horizon that retreats forever as you approach it. The air smells of wild thyme, sagebrush, and the dry, sweet scent of sun-baked earth. The architecture of the infinite, boring history of the steppe is the history of the horizontal line. Your eyes, accustomed to the verticality of mountains and the enclosures of city walls, must now adjust to the infinite. The sky here is not a ceiling. It is a presence. It accounts for 4/5 of your vision. The grass is the steppe, the feather grass of the plains. When the wind moves across it, the steppe does not just rustle. It flows in long, silver-green waves. The sound is a low, persistent hiss, a white noise that persists for 24 hours a day. It is the breath of the planet. As your caravan moves at its steady 3-mile-per-hour pace, you realize that speed is an illusion. You are a tiny point of movement in a landscape that has not changed since the last ice age. The nomadic mystery, the Xiongnu and the Scythians in this vastness. You encounter the true masters of the Silk Road, the nomads. In this era, they are the Xiongnu to the east, and the Scythians or Saka to the west, to the settled civilizations of the Han or the Romans. These people are primitive and mysterious, but as a merchant, you see the sophisticated reality of their lives. Their homes are the yurts or gairs. These are masterpieces of ancient engineering, circular, lattice-walled structures covered in thick, waterproof sheep's wool felt. A yurt can be dismantled in 30 minutes and packed onto the back of a camel or an ox. It is a home that moves with the seasons, a philosophy of life that rejects the heaviness of stone and brick. You watch a group of nomads moving across the horizon. They do not walk. They are part of the horse. The boring history of the nomad is the history of the stirrup and the compound bow. They move with a fluidity that makes the sedentary world look clumsy. They are the echoes of the steppe, appearing from the haze of the horizon and disappearing back into it before you can speak a word. The logistics of the sea of grass. How does a merchant navigate an ocean of grass? The mystery lies in the stars and the way markers. Occasionally, you come across an ovua sacred cairn made of stones and bones. Every traveler who passes adds a stone to the pile. Over centuries, these mounds become massive, silent witnesses to the passage of millions. The water here is found in hidden wells. These are not marked by structures, but by the subtle change in the color of the grass a slightly deeper green that indicates water just beneath the surface. You rely on your nomadic guides, men whose ancestors have memorized the location of every spring for 1,000 miles. They navigate by the texture of the wind and the taste of the dust. The mystery of the kurgan. As you travel, you pass the kurgans, the great burial mounds of the ancient Scythian kings. These are the pyramids of the steppe. In 120 BCE, many are already centuries old. They are silent, grassy hills that hide incredible treasures. Golden stags, intricate jewelry, and frozen mummies preserved in the permafrost. There is a profound, boring stillness to these mounds. They represent the nomadic belief in the long sleep. They believe that the soul, like the nomad, needed its horses and its gold for the journey through the journey. Infinite sky. You feel a strange sense of companionship with these long-dead kings. You are both travelers in the same vast silence. The celestial clockwork at night on the steppe, the infinite sky, reveals its true power. Without mountains to block the view, the stars rise from the very edge of the earth. You can see the curvature of the planet in the way the constellations emerge. The nomads teach you the clockwork of the sky. They do not use the names of Greek heroes for the stars. They see the golden peg, the North Star, around which the 7 gods, the Big Dipper, rotate like a herd of celestial horses. The boring history of the night is the slow, silent rotation of the cosmos. You lie on the ground, feeling the warmth of the earth beneath you. In the steppe, there is no echo because there is nothing for the sound to bounce off of. Your own voice seems to disappear the moment you speak. It is a place of absolute, crushing humility. The harmony of the herd, the soundtrack of your sleep, is the sound of the herd. The nomads follow the migrations of the wild asses, chalan, and the saiga antelopes with their strange, bulbous noses. The sound of 10,000 hooves in the distance is not a roar, but a low-frequency vibration that you feel in your bones rather than hear in your ears. It is a primitive rhythm. It is the sound of the earth's pulse. As you watch the smoke from the yurt's central opening rise straight up toward the stars, you feel a deep, biological sense of peace. Humans were nomads for 99% of our history. The steppe is the landscape of our DNA. The leading of the grass. As the days turn into weeks, the grass begins to change again. It becomes shorter, more alkaline. You are approaching the western edges of the steppe, where the influence of the great sea, the Mediterranean, begins to be felt in the air, but the echoes of the steppe stay with you. You have learned that the world is not a collection of cities, but a vast, breathing space where the sky is the only ruler. You carry this silence with you, tucked into the folds of your silk. As you move toward the Roman shadow in the west, the silk you carry, once a product of the humid forests of the east, has now been bleached by the steppe sun and scented by the steppe wind. It is no longer just cloth. It is a map of your journey. The Roman shadow, from the Levant to the Mediterranean. The transition into the lands of the west is marked not by a gate, but by the appearance of stone. After months of soft sand, yielding grass, and mountain shale, your feet find the hard, uncompromising surface of a Roman road. You have entered the Roman shadow, a world of law, architecture, and a hunger for luxury that sustains the very road you traveled as you descend from the Iranian plateau toward the fertile crescent of the Levant. The air changes. It loses the dry, metallic edge of the high steppes and becomes heavy with the scent of cedar, salt, and ancient dust. You are approaching the edge of the world's greatest inner sea, the Mediterranean. The engineering of the West. The boring history of the Roman West is the history of the straight line. Unlike the winding, organic trails of the East that followed the whims of rivers and the instincts of camels, the Roman roads, the via, are defiant. They cut through hills and span valleys with arches of limestone. Listen to the sound of your caravan on this new surface. the rhythmic clack-clack of the camel's hooves against the basalt paving stones. These stones were laid by legions, fitted together with such precision that even the smallest blade of grass struggles to find a home between them. There is a profound, repetitive stability to this sound. It tells you that you are no longer a nomad. You are a guest of an empire that values permanence above all else. Mystery of the Levant, Palmyra and the desert fringe before you reach the sea. You must pass through the Tadmor, or Palmyra, the bride of the desert. In 120 BCE, Palmyra is a growing miracle of limestone. It is a city built on an oasis. Where the Roman influence meets the Persian spirit, you stop your caravan under a colonnade of Corinthian columns. The stone is a pale, creamy yellow, the color of a desert moon. Here, the mystery of the Silk Road takes on a new form. You see merchants wearing the Roman toga, but speaking the Aramaic of the local tribes. You see the tax tariff of Palmyra, carved into a massive stone slab, detailing the cost of every camel load of silk, myrrh, and frankincense. The boring history. Here is the history of bureaucracy. You watch the scribes with their wax tablets and styluses, recording the weights of your bales. The scratching of the stylus is a tiny rhythmic sound that has governed the flow of wealth for centuries. In the Roman shadow, everything is measured, everything is recorded, and everything has its price. The scent of the Great Sea as you move further west. Toward the ports of Antioch and Tyre, the horizon begins to shimmer with a different kind of light. It is not the heat haze of the Taklamakan, but the blue haze of the Mediterranean. The air becomes humid. You feel the salt on your skin, a sharp, stinging sensation that is entirely new to a traveler from the deep interior of the continent. This is the scent of the Levant, a mixture of drying fish, purple dye, the famous Tyrian purple, and the damp, resinous smell of the Lebanese cedars. For the first time in a year, you see the great water. To the ancient mind, the Mediterranean was the center of the earth, and Mare Nostra. The waves lap against the limestone quays with a slow, hypnotic pulse. Hush, wash, hush. It is the heartbeat of the West, a rhythmic liquid sleep that contrasts with the dry, whistling winds of the steppe. The Roman appetite for silk in the markets of Antioch. You finally see the destination. You see the Roman elite. They are men and women who have never seen a silkworm, never felt the sting of a Gobi sandstorm, and never gasped for air on the Pamir passes. Yet, they are the ones who drive this entire machine of trade. There is a boring mystery in the way the Romans view your cargo. They call it Sears, the land of silk. They believe silk grows on trees like wool or is combed from the leaves of exotic flowers. They do not know the secret of the moth, but they are obsessed with the result. You watch a Roman matron touch a sample of your finest white silk. The way the fabric flows over her hand like water is a moment of pure, silent alchemy. The Romans worry that silk is too revealing, that it is a sign of moral decay, but they cannot stop buying it. In the Roman Senate, men debate the drain of gold to the east every year. Mountains of Roman gold denarii flow out of the Levant, through the desert, and across the mountains to the Han Emperor, all in exchange for this shimmering gossamer thread. You are the needle that sews these two worlds together. The architecture of the port at the harbor of Tyre. You watch the great ships, the honoraria. These are massive wooden vessels with square sails and hulls reinforced with lead. The boring history of the port is the sound of the pulleys. Creak, groan, thud. The silk is moved from the backs of camels to the dark, cool holds of the ships. It is packed alongside amphorae of wine and olive oil. The smell of the ship is a dense tapestry of pine pitch, old seawater, and fermented grapes. As you stand on the quay, you realize that your journey on land is over, but the silk's journey has only just begun. It will sail past the smoking volcanoes of Italy, through the pillars of Hercules, and into the villas of Rome, the solitude of the Western. Your last night in the Levant is spent in a villa overlooking the sea. The architecture is different here: open courtyards with mosaic floors, the sound of a small marble fountain splashing in the center. The Roman shadow is a shadow of order. The stars are the same stars you saw in the steppe, but here they are framed by the perfect geometry of a Roman roofline. You lie on a couch, feeling the heavy, salt-laden air fill your lungs. The sea provides a constant, low-frequency white noise that is deeper and more profound than the silence of the desert. You think of the thousands of people who have touched your silk, the girl in Chang'an who fed the worms, the nomad who guarded the caravan, the Sogdian who negotiated the price, and now the Roman sailor who will carry it across the waves. None of them will ever meet. They live in different worlds, separated by geography and language, yet they are all part of the same tapestry of trade. The eternal horizon. As you drift toward sleep, the image of the Silk Road begins to fade into the image of the sea. Both are vast, both are dangerous, and both are bridges. The boring history of the world is not found in the wars of the Caesars, but in this slow, persistent movement of goods and ideas. The Roman shadow is long, but the Silk Road is longer. It has stretched your soul across the width of the world. You are no longer just a man. You are a witness to the unity of the ancient earth. The waves continue their rhythmic dance against the stone, a soothing liquid lullaby that carries you into a dreamless, peaceful sleep. Hidden treasures of the ancients, artifacts and lost wisdom. The Silk Road is not merely a path of commerce. It is a long, winding library of human experience, much of it buried beneath the weight of centuries. As you begin your journey back toward the heart of Asia, leaving the Roman ports behind, you find yourself drawn not to the markets, but to the silence of the ruins. This is the boring history of what remains when the merchants have moved on, the artifacts, the scrolls, and the lost wisdom of civilizations that the desert has claimed as its own. The architecture of the hidden in the ancient world of 120 BCE. The hidden treasures were often found in the most desolate places. You stop at a site near the edge of the Tarim Basin, where the wind has partially uncovered a cave system carved into the side of a sandstone cliff. These are the precursors to the great grottos of later centuries. As you step inside, the temperature drops instantly. The air is dry, ancient, and smells of dust and mineral salts. Your lantern casts a long, flickering shadow against walls that are covered in frescoes. These are not just decorations. They are the visual records of a world that existed before the first Silk Road was even mapped. You see figures with braided hair, wearing felt tunics and boots, the ancestors of the people who first tamed the horse. The mystery of the manuscripts. In a corner of a sun-bleached ruin, you encounter a cache of manuscripts. In this era, paper is a rare and mysterious technology, still largely confined to the East. Most of what you see is written on strips of wood, bamboo, or dried birch bark. The boring history of these scrolls is found in the rhythm of the scribe's hand. You run your fingers over the charcoal ink. It is still dark, preserved by the absolute lack of humidity. These are not the grand histories of kings. They are the daily records of life. A list of grain rations for a border garrison. A letter from a father to a son who has traveled too far west. A recipe for a medicine made of crushed apricot kernels and desert honey. There is a profound, meditative quality to these mundane details. They remind you that the ancient world was built on a million small, quiet acts of survival. To read them is to hear the whispers of the past, a low-frequency hum of human continuity that lulls the mind into a state of deep reflection. The artifacts of the unknown among the treasures are artifacts that defy simple explanation. You find a small bronze mirror, its back decorated with symbols that represent the cosmic order, the square of the earth within the circle of the heavens. In the dim light, the polished surface still catches a faint reflection. You see beads made of glass that were crafted in the workshops of Phoenicia, resting beside coins minted in the Greco-Bactrian kingdoms of the Hindu Kush. This is the archaeology of connection. Every object is a traveler. A piece of jade from the Kunlun Mountains, carved into the shape of a cicada, the symbol of rebirth, has traveled 1,000 miles to be buried here. The boring history. Here is the history of craftsmanship. You think of the hours, the weeks, and the years spent carving a single piece of stone. In the ancient world, time was the most abundant resource. There was no rush. The artisan's hand moved with the same slow, deliberate pace as the stars above. The lost wisdom of the stars, ancients possessed a wisdom that was inextricably linked to the landscape. In the ruins of an old observatory, you find stone markers aligned with the solstices. These people did not have telescopes, yet they understood the clockwork of the universe. They knew that the Earth was a vast, breathing organism. They tracked the movements of the planets with a mathematical precision that feels like magic. As you sit among the fallen stones, you look up at the same stars they mapped. The constellations have shifted only slightly in 1,000 years. There is a soothing, astronomical scale to this realization. Your journey, your silk, and your life are all part of a much larger, slower cycle of time. The silence of the statues, perhaps the most mysterious treasures, are the statues. In the Gandhara region, you see the birth of a new art form, where the aesthetics of the Greeks met the spirituality of the East. You see a statue of a serene figure, its robes carved in the flowing, realistic style of a Roman senator, but its face expressing a deep, internal peace. The eyes of the statue are half closed, as if it is eternally drifting toward sleep. It is a visual representation of the stillness that you have been seeking on this road. The stone does not age. It does not hunger. It simply exists. Watching it, your own heart rate slows. You feel the weight of history, not as a burden, but as a warm, heavy blanket. The legacy of the sand. The desert is the ultimate curator. It chooses what to keep and what to destroy. You realize that for every artifact you find, there are 1,000,000 more buried deep beneath the dunes of the Taklamakan. Entire cities, with their libraries and their songs, are resting in the long sleep. This is not a tragedy. It is a cycle. The sand protects these treasures from the violence of the world above. They are hidden until the wind decides it is time for them to be seen again. This realization brings a sense of profound security. Nothing is ever truly lost. It is only waiting. The eternal whisper as the moon rises over the ruins. The hidden treasures seem to glow with a pale silver light. The shadows of the columns stretch out like the fingers of a giant. You lie down on the soft sand, surrounded by the ghosts of the ancient world. The sound of the wind through the ruins is a lost wisdom of its own. It is a low, mournful, flute-like sound that carries no words, only the feeling of vast, empty time. You are a merchant of silk, but tonight you are a merchant of memories. You carry the weight of these artifacts in your heart, knowing that you are the bridge between the hidden past and the unknown future. The boring history of the world is a long, slow story that never truly ends. As you close your eyes, the images of the scrolls, the mirrors, and the statues merge into a single golden haze. You are safe in the hands of the ancients, drifting into a sleep that is as deep and as quiet as the sand-buried cities of the Silk Road. The eternal echo, the legacy of the long road home. The journey does not end with a destination. It ends with a realization. As you turn your caravan back toward the east, leaving the salty humidity of the Mediterranean behind, and retracing the stone-paved Roman roads toward the rising sun, the air begins to thin once more. You are on the long road home. But home is no longer just a city in the Han Empire. Home has become the road itself. The boring history of the return journey is a study in perspective. The landmarks that once seemed terrifying, the jagged Pamir peaks, the singing sands of the Taklamakan, the vastness of the steppe, are now familiar friends. You move with the confidence of a man who has measured the earth with his own footsteps. Architecture of memory. The return trip is a process of internalizing the world. As you walk, the eternal echo begins to play in your mind. Every sound of the trail has a history. The rhythmic clink-clink of the led camel's bell is not just a signal. It is a heartbeat to the ancient mind. These bells served a dual purpose. They kept the caravan together in the dust storms, and their constant, repetitive tone was believed to ward off the silence of the void. In the boring history for sleep, we focus on this repetition. Step, bell, breath. For 3,000 miles, this has been your reality. The memory of the road is etched into your muscles. You no longer need to look at the stars to know where the north lies. Your body has become a compass, attuned to the magnetic pull of the horizon. The legacy of the exchange as you pass through the oasis once more. You see the legacy of your first journey taking root. You see a farmer in the Fergana Valley planting a seed that came from a Roman grape. You see a monk in a cave temple reciting a sutra that was translated through 4 different languages. The Silk Road was never just about silk. It was a biological and intellectual highway. The boring history of this legacy is found in the quiet transformation of the world. The spread of the humble peach from east to west dot the movement of the rose and the jasmine, the invisible travel of mathematical concepts, and the secret of the stirrup. These are the eternal echoes. They are the things we take for granted today. But in 120 BCE, they were miracles of connection. You realize that you aren't just carrying bales of fabric. You are a pollinator of civilizations. Every time you stop to trade, you leave behind a piece of your world and take a piece of theirs. The world is becoming a tapestry, woven together by millions of these tiny, boring, everyday transactions. The mystery of the returning merchant. There is a specific kind of solitude that belongs to the merchant returning home. You are no longer the same person who left the gates of Chang'an. You have seen the Roman shadow. You have touched the roof of the world, and you have slept under the infinite sky of the nomads. In the ancient world, to travel this far was to experience a social death and a rebirth. Your friends and family have aged by years. Children have been born who do not know your face. The boring history of your return is the slow, quiet process of reintegration. You carry with you the lost wisdom of the trail, a patience that is as deep as the lowest soil. You no longer rush. You understand that the most important things in life move at the pace of a camel. The final approach. The gates reappear after months of travel. The yellow dust of the Hexi corridor begins to thicken. The air grows warmer, carrying the scent of the Yellow River and the charcoal fires of the capital. And then, through the haze of the afternoon sun, you see it, the Mingdi Gate of Chang'an. The gate looks the same, yet it looks different. It is a monument to the permanence of the empire, but you now know that its walls are porous. The Silk Road has made the walls irrelevant. Ideas, religions, and tastes have already flowed through these gates long before your caravan arrived. The boring history of the arrival is not a grand parade. It is the slow, methodical process of the customs house. The heavy timber beams groan as they open. The guards, bored and tired in the heat, check your permits. The sound of the city, the shouting of vendors, the clatter of carts feels overwhelming after the sacred silence of the desert. You find yourself longing for the quiet of the campfire, the eternal echo in the modern world. As we sit in the present day, looking back at your journey in 120 BCE, we hear the eternal echo. The The Silk Road never truly died. It simply changed form. The paths you walked are now the routes of railways and fiber optic cables. The globalism you practice, the slow, respectful exchange between strangers, is the foundation of our modern world. The mystery of the Silk Road is that it remains a bridge of dreams. It represents the human desire to see what is over the next hill, to trade a piece of what we have for a piece of what we do not understand. It is the ultimate story of human curiosity. The final resting point, you lead your caravan to the final warehouse. The silk is unloaded for the last time. The camels are led to the stables, where they will have a long, well-deserved rest in the shade. You sit on a wooden bench, leaning your back against a wall of rammed earth. The sun is setting, casting long purple shadows across the city grid. The boring history of your journey has reached its final page. Your muscles finally let go of the tension they have held for thousands of miles. The sound of the city fades into a distant hum. Like the singing sands of the Taklamakan, you are home. But as you close your eyes, you don't see the walls of your room. You see the horizon. You see the Milky Way over the steppe. You feel the cold wind of the Pamirs on your cheeks. The road is now inside you. The lullaby of the long road, the eternal echo, is a lullaby. It is the sound of the world turning. It is the sound of time passing, slow and inevitable. The Silk Road is a reminder that we are all travelers, and that every journey, no matter how long or how difficult, eventually leads to a place of rest. As you drift into the deepest sleep of your life, the legacy of the long road home wraps around you like a blanket of the finest, softest silk. You are safe. The journey is complete. The echoes of the bells fade into the silence of a peaceful, ancient night. Sleep now, traveler. The road will be there when you wake. Shadows of the forgotten empires. Ruins in the red sand. There are parts of the Silk Road where the map goes blank, where the authority of the Han Emperor or the Roman Caesar does not reach. This is the realm of the red sand, the deep, iron-rich deserts of the Transoxiana and the edges of the Karakum. Here, you are not walking through a living landscape, but through a graveyard of empires that were ancient before the first silk bale ever left China. As your caravan moves through this crimson dust, the air feels different. It is static, heavy with the weight of things unremembered. You are entering the shadows of the forgotten dot, the architecture of decay. The boring history of a ruin is the history of gravity. As you lead your camels past the remains of a fortress that no longer has a name, you observe the slow, methodical way the earth reclaims its own. These walls were once built of mud brick, reinforced with straw and salt. Now they have been sculpted by the wind into surreal melted shapes that resemble sleeping giants or frozen waves. The color of the world here is a deep, resonant ochre. The sand is not yellow. It is the color of dried blood and rusted iron. As the sun moves across the sky, the shadows of these ruins grow long and thin, reaching out across the dunes like fingers. There is a profound, rhythmic silence here. The only sound is the occasional tinkle of a fragment of baked clay falling from a wall, a tiny gravitational event that has been waiting 1,000 years to happen. The mystery of the Kushans and the Greco-Bactrians. In this red silence, you encounter the ghosts of the Kushan Empire and the lost Greco-Bactrian kingdoms. To the modern mind, these are forgotten empires. But as you walk through their ruins, you see the archaeology of the impossible. You stop at the base of a crumbling stupa. Here, in the middle of a wasteland, you find a Corinthian column capital carved from local limestone. It is a piece of Greece, thousands of miles from the Mediterranean, abandoned in the red sand. The boring mystery is the thought of the mason who carved it. He worked with the same tools and the same geometry as the builders of the Parthenon. Yet his work was destined to be swallowed by the Asian desert. You run your hand over the stone. It is cool, despite the heat. The texture is grainy, weathered by centuries of sandblasting. You are touching a bridge between worlds that collapsed long ago. This is the Barrow of Ghosts, a place where the Silk Road reveals its most melancholy secret, that all empires are temporary, and only the road remains. The logistics of the lost city, your caravan camps for the night within the perimeter of a sand-buried city. This city, perhaps it was once called Alexandria on the Oxus, has no inhabitants now, but the wind. The boring history of the camp is the ritual of protection. You arrange the camels in a circle within the ancient courtyard. The walls, though broken, still provide a barrier against the red wind. You light a fire using the dried roots of the saxaul tree. The wood burns with a blue flame and almost no smoke, its heat intense and steady. As you sit by the fire, you look at the ground. You are sitting on a mosaic floor, hidden beneath 2 inches of dust. You brush some of it away to reveal a pattern of dolphins and vines. The juxtaposition of the marine imagery, the sea, dolphins against the backdrop of a parched red desert is a silent paradox. It is an echo of a time when this land was greener, when rivers flowed where there is now only salt, the water of the ancients. The dead Carezzo, did thousands of people live in this red waste? The mystery lies beneath your feet. The ancients built the Carez, a network of underground aqueducts that stretched for miles, bringing water from the distant mountains without losing a drop to evaporation. Now the Carez are dead. They are shadow tunnels beneath the sand. As you lie down to sleep, you can almost hear the eternal echo of water that no longer flows. The boring history of the water is the history of its absence. The civilization didn't fall to a great army. It fell to the slow, rhythmic drying of the earth. It was a tragedy that took 300 years to complete a slow motion, collapse that mirrors the pace of your own journey. The celestial alignment of the ruins above the red ruins, the sky is a deep indigo void. In the ancient world, cities were often laid out to mirror the constellations. As you look up from the courtyard, you realize that the main gate of the fortress is perfectly aligned with the rising of Sirius. The boring history of the stars is their indifference. They shone over this city when it was a bustling hub of the Silk Road, filled with the smell of roasting meat and the sound of a dozen languages. They shine over it now when it is only a shadow in the sand. This realization is incredibly calming. It places your own journey into a vast, astronomical context. Your worries about the price of silk or the health of your camels are tiny ripples in a sea of infinite time. The treasure of the dust in the morning, before the caravan moves on, you find a small artifact in the dust near your bedroll. It is a clay bulla, a seal used by a merchant 2,000 years ago. It bears the image of a lion and a Greek inscription. This is the shadow of an empire you can hold in your hand. It represents a contract, a promise, a piece of trust that has outlived the kingdom that guaranteed it. You don't take it. You place it back into the red sand, allowing the desert to keep its secret. The Silk Road is a take-and-give relationship, and today you give back a piece of history. The rhythm of the red sand as the caravan leaves the ruins. The thud-thud of the camel's feet returns to its hypnotic tempo. The ruins fade into the heat haze, becoming indistinguishable from the natural rock formations. The shadows of the forgotten empires are not scary. They are a form of deep rest. They remind us that the world is much older than our current moment, and that there is a quiet dignity in the way the earth reclaims the works of man. You carry the echo of the red sand with you. It is a heavy, warm memory that settles in the back of your mind, a reminder of the boring beauty of decay and the eternal resilience of the road. Your silk is still with you, a vibrant thread of life moving through a landscape of ghosts, heading toward a future that will one day become a ruin of its own. The merchants, solitude, a reflection under the celestial vault. The journey has reached its philosophical peak. You are no longer measuring your progress by the miles covered or the cities visited. You are measuring it by the slow rotation of the stars. In this final stretch of the Silk Road, you find yourself in the great emptiness, a high plateau where the earth is flat and the sky is a perfect, unobstructed dome. This is the moment of the merchant's solitude. In the ancient world of 120 BCE, solitude was not a lack of company. It was a presence. It was a heavy, velvet-like blanket that settled over the caravan once the sun dipped below the horizon. As the heat of the day radiates back into the atmosphere, leaving the ground cool and firm, you find yourself alone with the celestial vault. The architecture of the void, the boring history of the night sky, is the history of the original map. Before there were roads, there were stars. As you lie on your back upon a thick indigo-dyed felt rug, the world beneath you seems to disappear. You are no longer a merchant on a road. You are a passenger on a planet spinning through a silent, diamond-studded void. The sky is so clear at this altitude that the stars do not just appear. They vibrate. You see the Milky Way not as a faint cloud, but as a dense, frothy river of light, the Silver River, as the Han astronomers called it. It arches from one horizon to the other, a cosmic bridge that mirrors the Silk Road on Earth. The rhythmic pulsing of the stars creates a visual white noise, a steady, unhurried flickering that synchronizes with your heartbeat. The mystery of the inner journey. While the silk you carry is a physical weight, your thoughts have become weightless. In this primitive solitude, the boundaries of the self begin to blur. You think of the millions of people living in the cities you have visited, the Romans in their stone villas, the Sogdians in their brick houses, the Han in their timber palaces. To the stars above, they are all the same. The mystery of the Silk Road is that it forces you to confront your own insignificance. You are a tiny point of consciousness moving across a vast, indifferent landscape. But in this boring realization, there is a profound peace. If you are small, then your worries are smaller. The price of silk, the danger of raiders, the fatigue of the journey, all of it dissolves into the vast, dark blue of the night. The logistics of silence. Listen to the boring sounds of the midnight camp. It is not a total silence, but a layer of soft, rhythmic textures. The crackle of a single dying ember in the fire pit, the deep, resonant sigh of a camel in its REM sleep, the faint hiss of the wind moving through the dry shrubs of the plateau. These sounds do not break the silence. They define it. They are the acoustics of the ancient world. In 120 BCE, there is no mechanical noise, no hum of electricity, no roar of engines. The loudest thing in your world is the wind or the sound of your own breath. This absence of noise allows your nervous system to settle into a state of deep rest. Your ears, no longer on guard, begin to perceive the music of the spheres, the imagined harmony of the moving planets. The wisdom of the celestial vault. Ancients believed that the stars were the eyes of the ancestors, or the lanterns of the gods. But as a merchant who has seen the world, you see them as a clockwork of truth. You have watched the Big Dipper, the Beidou, rotate around the North Star for hundreds of nights. You have timed your marches by the rising of Orion. This is the lost wisdom of the traveler, the understanding that time is not a line, but a circle. Just as the stars return to their positions every year, the Silk Road is a cycle of departure and return, of giving and receiving. The solitude you feel is the realization that you are never truly alone, because you are part of this celestial machinery. The texture of the Velzo, ancient night, the air in this high solitude is clean and sharp. It smells of nothing, a pure scent that is actually the absence of dust and human activity. It is the smell of the ancient night. You pull your heavy wool cloak tighter around your shoulders. The fabric is rough and warm, a tangible connection to the sheep of the high pastures. The boring history of the night is the slow movement of shadows. As the moon thin silver crescent rises, the landscape is transformed into a world of charcoal and silver. The dunes and rocks take on a ghostly glow. It is a mystery that repeats every 28 days, a lunar rhythm that has governed the tides and the hearts of men since the beginning of time. The final reflection, the merchant's peace as you drift toward the edge of sleep. You think of the silk one last time. It is resting in its leather cases, silent and shimmering in the dark. It is a product of the earth, a gift from a worm and a leaf, destined for a world that will eventually turn to dust. But tonight, that doesn't matter. What matters is the stillness. What matters is the celestial vault that holds you in its embrace. You have traveled the greatest road on earth, and you have found that the most astonishing thing of all is not the gold of Rome or the jade of China, but this moment of perfect, unhurried peace under the stars. The eternal echo of the road is now a whisper. Sleep, it says. The stars will watch the path. The earth will hold your weight. The journey is not a destination, but a state of being. The closing of the eyes, your breathing becomes slow and shallow, matching the vast rhythmic pulse of the universe. The solitude is no longer a void. It is a full, rich presence that carries you into a dreamless, restorative sleep. The merchant's journey has ended not in a city, but in the heart of the ancient, silent night. The Silk Road remains, a ghost trail under the moonlight, waiting for the sun to rise and for the cycle to begin again. But for now, there is only the boring, beautiful, infinite dark.